So we're going to be looking at opening a JPEG file from within either Lightroom or the likes of Adobe Camera Raw and Bridge, like we're working in here. Now we'll pretty much either shoot in a JPEG on camera, a RAW on camera, or both. We all basically work in slightly different ways. I shoot both a JPEG and a RAW file, but basically at some stage we might have a JPEG file and we want to be doing something with it. We might want to take it through the likes of some adjustments that could actually be repeated or changed at some future date without having to create the likes of a PSD file and so on. So really what we're looking at here is that the image on the right hand side, the black and white one, it's a JPEG, as you can see on its file name, and so is the image on the left hand side. The color image is still a JPEG file. The main difference between them is if we look in the top the top right hand side of the colored image, we can see there's like a little box with 3 sliders. We'll get to that in a minute. And on this file there isn't them. So basically if I double click this image, it opens directly within Photoshop itself. Now that's probably what you want to do anyway, open in default in your software and so on with it. However, when I go to click the other JPEG image, because it's got the sliders in it, this is going to take me through the Camera Raw window first, because it's had some adjustments there. So even though initially it looks like it's going to open in Photoshop, it stalls you with the adjustment window that we've got here, and then basically we can make any adjustments to it, and we can then actually press the open command, and then it opens up in Photoshop. Now the difference being with this kind of image is that when I go to close this image down, even though I've made no adjustments to it, only adjustments within the RAW, it's going to ask me if I want to actually save this file. And the reason being, it technically has had some adjustments to it. If you are working with a JPEG file though, like we just saw, and you want to remain the adjustments, you don't want to overwrite the save here. You want to save as, okay, to ensure that you can still have the other file. Let's press cancel to that. We'll close this image down. We'll press no. Close the Photoshop window down, we'll work back through here. So let's kind of look at this as how it all works together. So the first things first, if we want to open a JPEG file through a Camera Raw window, if we select it, remember if I just double click it, it opens directly within Photoshop. However, with that file selected, if I come up to File and I open in Camera Raw here, it's going to go through the Camera Raw window, which is the adjustment window here. Okay, I want a shot which has basically got the color in. So with these sliders here, do you know what? I just thought about it. Let me just double click it. We'll make it black and white. We're not going to open it in Photoshop, we're just going to press done, which basically shuts the image down in the window but basically makes the adjustments is here. Now you can see the sliders are there. If I double click it, it opens it back into the RAW window for me again, and of course I can kind of bring the colors back. I'll just bring a little bit of color back, okay? Just press in done, or open for now. In fact, that opens it in Photoshop. I don't want to oversave it, so I'm just going to press no, and we're back here again. Okay, so we got some color. However, if I want to remove all of these adjustments that I just put onto this the JPEG file, all I need to do is right click on the selected image, go to develop settings, and clear the settings. Now we can do the same thing by going into the Adobe Camera Raw. So in other words, here, File, opening Camera Raw, or because it's already had the adjustments, double clicking it, that will automatically open up, and then we can kind of clear any of the adjustments that we might have made to that file. Remember, pressing done will basically not open it up in Photoshop. Cancel will forget the alterations you just did, and open will open it in Photoshop itself. So if I just press done now, even though I've reset all the differences here, you can still see the sliders are at the top. So in other words, this will still need to go through ACR if it hasn't had any adjustments done. Because it hasn't had any, well, basically it's open it straight up into Photoshop itself. Control W and it shuts down in a normal way. So even though it's got the sliders up here, it hasn't had any adjustment made, so Photoshop can go straight into it. As soon as, I'm just going to go to Control R to open it through the raw window, as soon as I make any adjustments to it at all, and I then basically double click it again, it has to force itself through the ACR. It's very, very intelligent for us and things, really. So it's allowing us to do the kind of the same process. So in other words, if I open it now in Photoshop, and let's say I do something to it, I'm just going to do something, give an extra bit of contrast on there, pressing OK. So now I want to save as. So if I go File and Save As, let's just add a W onto the end for working. Pressing Save, Control W to close that down. And now what we can see, if I just drag it up side by side, we've got the same file, one which has the slider bars on the top, one of them doesn't. The one we just saved as has the W by the side. I'm going to identify that with a different color for now so we know what we're looking at. So this has a red tag, whereas the original has the blue tag. So if I double click on the blue tag, it forces it through ACR. If I double click on the red tag image, it opens it directly in Photoshop. So you can force an image to go through RAW as well, and to do that you basically select the image you want to, or images, and you go into File, Open in Camera Raw. And then when it opens up in Camera Raw, of course, we can make any of the adjustments that we want. Pressing Done means it now comes back into, in this case, Bridge, or if you're using Lightroom, the same. It's now got the sliders on the top here. If I'd done the open, it would have opened up it in Photoshop, and I would have been asked before I shut it down. So if I do this now, and it's going to say, do you want to make any changes to this image? If I press yes, it's going to force a Photoshop option here, a document, a PSD, a multi-page document, or I can go ahead and reset it to the JPEG. Let's keep it on the PSD for a minute and just press save. So now we technically have 3 files that are the same. Let me just give that a different color. So this is a PSD file. Notice we don't have any adjustments on it. We have the red file which has the adjustments, and we have a JPEG file here. So if I was to just double click on the PSD file, you would think that it's going to open itself through the Adobe Camera Raw filter, but it didn't. Okay, so you don't have the adjustments that you think you have saved. So don't save a JPEG file as a PSD after doing alterations of it in the likes of the Camera Raw, because it won't remember the adjustments. The only way to do that is if we kind of make this layer into a smart object within Photoshop itself, and then actually follow the Camera Raw filter in the actual Photoshop window, which we'll show you now. So anyway, let's close this down. We can go ahead and delete this image. Okay, so we're back here. So if we double click on this file, remember it's basically allowing us to do the changes back, forth, and so on. We open up. As I press the open, it remembers in a sidecar file called XMP that the alterations that it's had done. Now, if I want to use a the Camera Raw filter within here, I can straight away kind of click on Filter and Camera Raw Filter. This opens up a window, of course, like you can see, but in this case what we're doing to it is we are adding a destruction. So in other words, I press OK, I can't go back into that same window and basically work smart. Okay, so in other words, I can't just click onto the Adobe Camera Raw filter once more and bring back the color, because you can see we worked in a destructive way. If I just pull up the history channel for a minute, so in window we click on history and we step backwards to the open here. If I now duplicate that layer, remember we've done that before, Control J, this duplicates the layer. If I now go to filter and the Adobe Camera Raw, it's going to allow us to do exactly the same thing that we did, and pressing OK. However, it hasn't fixed it yet, and the reason being, look, it's here and I can switch it off, yes, but in the same way, if I go back into filter and Camera Raw, it doesn't allow me to reset the adjustments that I made. Cancel that. Okay, let's now delete this layer and show you the proper way to use a JPEG file from within Photoshop to give us a very similar options like we just saw working through the bridge and Camera Raw window. In this case, we're going to duplicate the layer, Control J, then we're going to right click onto the gray part of the layer here, and we're going to convert it to a smart object. Now, by doing this, it basically creates, as it says, a smart object, and it makes it allow editable adjustments. So if I now go into Filter and Camera Raw Filter, and we now do the adjustments that we want, whatever it's going to be, and we just press OK, you can see now this looks totally different from the first time when all it was just actually a layer by itself. So this is a smart object here, and then if I just double click onto the Camera Raw filter itself, it reopens this window. I press OK, and basically it is editable. However, when we go to save this file now, so let's just similar, let's click on the Camera Raw. Let's just go to a preset and choose one of Photoshop's own kind of funky effects. For whatever reason, I've got no idea. Just going to press OK. Yep. And then I'm going to go to File, Save As. We're going to call it W1. It's a PSD, and we save. We shut that down. Oops. So there's our third image again. Okay, this is our PSD file though now. The difference being is that in the JPEG that's being adjusted here, if we were looking down at the bottom, we're seeing it's 2.7 megabytes. The second one is 2.86 megabytes, but the PSD file is 290 megabytes, okay? Because at this stage, it's no longer a JPEG compression file, it is now a full kind of working document. So when I kind of work in this image, it opens up straight away because it had no adjustment. If I wanted to have an adjustment, we go to File, Opening Camera Raw. We go ahead with the presets. I can't remember which one we just chose a minute ago. Let's choose that one there, and we press OK. Done. It means this has had the adjustments. We double click it. It opens in the ACR window. However, when we double click this one with the smart layer, smart object layer, it opens directly within Photoshop. We still have the ability to go in and double click and recover any lost information. So if we just go to defaults, That'll reset everything, pressing OK. So we're back to square one, but we can adjust the filter at any stage, and that's because we're in a smart object. So really, don't be afraid of shooting in JPEG. However, I will encourage you to shoot RAW because of the adjustable recovery that we could have with blown highlights. But if you are going to make an adjustment to an image, you're better to than kind of keep in this huge PSD document for absolutely no reason as far as the adjustments in the Camera Raw the filter is concerned. We're better to run it through the likes of ACR, make the adjustments that we want here, okay, then basically pressing in open, then save in this image once it's had some work done. If it was only basics, we'll go file and save as, and then we turn it into a JPEG file. Let's put an F on the end to this image as if it was finished. Just pressing save. We'll shut those down. And then we've got our next image that is here. So what we've done is still controlled ourselves a 2.7 megabyte image compared to actually the silly numbers that we're beginning to work on as far as the PSD. We'll talk about PSD documents and why you should be saving images as PSD in future episodes.